we have a question.
You said near the beginning of your discussion that until when you were young, there were only male science fiction writers. But now there are plenty of women. The ones I can think of offhand are Ursula Le Guin and Margaret Atwood.
Yes.
Have they had any influence on your writing?
Yes, very much so. I mean, the question is about Ursula Le Guin and Margaret Atwood and the very good women writers. Yes, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think Atwood has done something very interesting to the form. I, you know, ever since Handmaid's Tale, I've been very interested in that aspect of her writing. Ursula Le Guin actually was around even back then. I mean, she's been around for a long, long time, and I've admired her writing a lot, and B, she's been an amazingly benevolent force in my writing, because she has reviewed my books down the years, from very, very early times until right now, until this book.
Great review.
I'm very grateful for that. She's given very kindly and generous reading of my work, and I've been a fan of hers, so that makes it better, you know. But yes, I think there are now very powerful women's voices in science fiction, and it's much better for it.
Is there a question up at the back? Yes. Yep.
Hi. Where did you go to find all your information about gin, and what role do you think they play in sort of Western contemporary society?
The gin? Oh, I don't know, I just read everything I could find. A lot of it on completely nonsensical websites. You may or may not know that the internet is full of completely nonsensical websites. but you only have to scratch the surface and this whole world of insanity opens up to you. And some of that insanity is quite useful, you know, and gives you insane things that you can frankly steal. So I read a lot, just everything I could grab, you know, and then I think one of the things about writing fiction as opposed to non-fiction is that there's a certain point at which, no matter how assiduously you've researched, there's a point at which you have to close those books and make it up, you know, so yes, I did a lot of reading, and then I closed all those books and made them up. So that, for example, the portrait of Fairyland, where the Jinn live, is mostly me, really. It's mostly me, because although Paristan in the literature is named, Paristan translates as Fairyland. Pari, fairy, Paristan, Fairyland. Pari literally means a person with pars, which are wings, so winged creatures, land. But other than that, I had to imagine for myself what that might be like as a place. And I thought, well, here are these, I looked at all these old illustrations of grand palaces and things, and it struck me, well, they are very grand. And here are these people of enormous power and great longevity, I mean, very close to immortal, and yet there doesn't seem to be anything to do. One of the things you notice in these pictures is absences. There are no books. There are no TV sets. There's no internet. So I thought, what would they do all day? And the obvious answer was they would have sex. So
Just a refrain again and again that you use.
I gave them sex as a comic device. And I thought, you know, once you've had sex non-stop for several 100,000 years, it probably gets a little old. So sex becomes funny. I think the only way of writing about sex is to make it funny, because otherwise it becomes deeply embarrassing. And so they have, so when they come here, they find us interesting because we do all sorts of things other than have sex. In fact, most of us don't have much sex at all. But that gives us all this time to do other things, like write books. And so I wanted there to be this double thing in them, that on the one hand, they're powerful and eternal. And on the other hand, they are kind of fascinated by us because we are more interesting than them, you know. And the sex became, I mean, you know, I've never actually, in my books, you'll find relatively little of it.
You're never going to win the Bad Sex Award.
They keep putting me up for it.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
So, you know, so maybe I will. There's one scene in The Moor's Last Sigh, there's one scene in which the narrator describes the time his parents made love for the first time. And it's written with deep embarrassment. as it would be if you were describing your parents making love. You know? But other than that, it's almost all off stage, you know, until this book. But I've sort of made up for lost time.
We have time for one more question. Yeah, at the back.
Hi.
Hi. Where are you?
So I was just wondering on your thoughts on the current US political situation, which seems terrifyingly fantastical at the moment.
Yeah.
Oh.
You couldn't make up Trump.
This
You
is
could not
where
make up
the T word has reared its
Yeah,
head.
afraid so.
Well, I hope it's not going to happen, is what I think. And I think it's very frightening. And I think what Trump actually is a manifestation of is an international phenomenon, which is a disgust with traditional politics and with the system, which leads people to make all kinds of mistakes. I mean, it leads in France to the rise of Marine Le Pen and the Front National. It leads here to the rise of Jeremy Corbyn. And it's all part of the same rejectionist idea, you know, that traditional politics is corrupt and disgusting and needs to be abolished, and you need somebody who is not a part of the system to replace the system, you know. And in a way, Trump and Bernie Sanders are two sides of the same thing. You know, they're one from the left and one from the right. They're saying the same thing, that the system must be changed. And to use an old Marxian phrase, if the system cannot be changed, it must be destroyed. Now, that's a scary idea to me, because on the whole, when that happens, what turns up is something 10 times as bad. I think I just want to be optimistic about this, because the thing that's happened in America, which I think makes it difficult for Trump to win the presidency, is that America has changed in ways that are not favorable to the Republican Party. First of all, on a whole range of progressive issues. You know, Americans, whenever asked, are massively in favor of gun control. They're massively in favor of gay rights. This whole range of social issues, you know, legalizing marijuana, you know, et cetera, all kinds of things. You may or may not agree with these things, but I'm saying if you look at them as measures of liberalism, the country has moved towards much more progressive ideas. And I mean, a very large majority in favor of solving the big immigrant problem, you know, of naturalizing a lot of Mexican citizens and so on. People without papers, giving them rights. That's what people think is, I mean, very large majorities of Americans think that every time they're asked. And yet the Republican Party has opposed the immigration issue, it's opposed gay rights, it's opposed gun control, it's opposed all these things which Americans are in favor of. And it's now very hard for them, once he comes out of the Republican bubble and he has to deal with America, it's a different game. You know, and I think and also, by the way, there's another group that he's alienated colossally, which is women. You know, who he has spoken about with just almost stupefying disrespect. You know, and I think Republican women notice that as much as Democrat women. You know, so I think if you put all those things together, it's hard to see how he can get the presidency. I mean, I could in November be proved to be a fool, but the problem, I think, is that right now, that because of the continuing conflict between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, the Democrats are divided. In particular, young people are very much, as they say, feeling the burn. But the problem for Bernie Sanders is that it appears to be only young people and not Hispanics and not black people and not it's an aging population, not older voters. I mean, I went to Bernie Sanders' rally in Washington Square Park, and there was nobody there except young white people. And young white people are not America, you know, and they're not New York City either. So it was very striking, the homogeneous nature of the crowd. And I thought that's his problem, you know. So my view is that once we've got to the convention, and once there's a Democrat candidate, the party will begin to coalesce. as it always has. 8 years ago, it was Hillary and Barack Obama, and eventually it united very effectively behind the Obama candidacy. I think that'll happen again, and at that point, it'll become very difficult for Trump to defeat what is now being called the Obama coalition. So my view is it isn't going to happen, but that may be wishful thinking.